Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Joining me, RockyTopInsider.com's own Ryan Schumpert. Ryan, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Glad to be back on here. Glad to, we're at the perfect part of the year where, I'm fighting multiple Chaseisms of early season Tennessee baseball overreactions and one seed obsession. So I'm here ready to fight, ready to battle Chase, and that'll probably be the case the next couple of weeks. So excited. Should be a fun pod.
Hey, they're back in good graces, come back in the second half after disgusting first half against Vanderbilt on Saturday afternoon. And then the weekend, that's my biggest question here. It looked like y'all were out. Well, are y'all in the elements, Ryan Schumpert? Is this not an enclosure situation? Is there no heating areas? What's happening right now for covering Tennessee baseball? Because y'all looked cold.
Yeah, we have a roof over our head, so we're protected from rain, and kind of depending on the angle that the wind is blowing, we're protected from the wind. Like, it was a heavy wind on Sunday, but it was blowing in from right field, so we were protected. But yeah, it's open air. There's no heating, there's no cooling, so temperature-wise, we're dealing with all of it. So was bundled up. Really, it's not that bad when I can just keep my hands in the pocket. Like, it's cold, but whatever. It's when I gotta, be out.
But how are you typing away here, Ryan Schumpert?
Yeah, that's the problem. Typing away the entire game. Writing a story during a 7-inning baseball game, and that's the part where it gets a little bit not as fun. But as Rick Barnes would say, it is what it is, and it'll.
Who would like if you had to do like one of those things where they don't do these anymore? I don't think. But if you you have to put your hand on a car, and the last person has their hand on the car in the elements wins it. Who among the Tennessee baseball beat writers would be the last one standing, based on what you've seen from how they react in the elements? Who's the last one standing here?
Oh man, that's a good question. None of us are very good. Maybe Eric Kane. Ben McKee had a Cousin Eddie hat on. He looked like he was ready to play some ice hockey if needed after the game.
Yeah, big ice hockey guy himself.
Yeah, Mike Wilson had like a blanket out there with him. It certainly
thermal
isn't
or like a weighted blanket. That's where you want to go if it's weighted.
It's just normal blanket. Honestly, maybe Jack Foster, because I think Jack.
No way.
Jack said, friend of the program. The only reason I say this is he showed up on Friday and he had not checked the weather. He was like, I never checked the weather. And so
what?
He was.
That's the youngest person thing you can do. It's like, I didn't check the weather. I check the weather like an hour a day. Like every hour I'm checking the updates on the weather.
So maybe it's him. But maybe.
Wait, what do you mean? What was he wearing? How underdressed are we talking about here?
No, he had pants and like a pullover on, but like didn't have a jacket, didn't have any
so he wasn't going like short
and...
sleeve polo and like khaki shorts or anything, because that's
just
that
crazy.
No.
But it's a little too early to say. Like, check back with me next week, because I wasn't there on Saturday because of basketball, and maybe not the most shocking development. Hofstra did not bring a radio crew to do the game, so the away radio booth was open to sit in, which there's no heating in there, but there is a window, so it doesn't get nearly as cold. And like Jack and Eric and Noah were in there on Sunday, so they were a little bit blocked from the elements. So you need a little bit more time to say for sure, but at this point, I can't say any of us have been looking too good.
You know what has been looking good though? Those Sunday creams for Tennessee.
Thoughts on the stripes?
They're good.
Yeah,
I think it's good. I think it's their best uniform at the University of Tennessee. The fact that was ever in jeopardy of actually being changed is shameful. Let me just go ahead and say that, Ryan Schumpert. Shame all around that was potentially on the out. So I'm glad that's in. I'm glad we're seeing that. If you had taken the 3-1 odds of Tennessee's black uniforms not being there in opening weekend, I would have taken those up, because I was surprised.
No, they don't wear them early in the season.
I just thought that they were going to wear them because those were the Natty Championship unis. You know what I mean? Like that's why I just thought
maybe on
like
Friday, but
yeah.
after they didn't wear them on Friday. Two other uniforms to throw into the ring. Tennessee's softball is kind of like whitish cream with the orange pinstripes. Those are
Yeah.
great. The Tennessee script across the front, and then I love the Tennessee soccer checkerboard unis. I'm a big fan of those. So those might be my top three off the top of my head. Favorite Tennessee uniforms. Those two and the baseball creams.
The cream, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Oh
like,
yeah,
it's
completely
just,
agree.
And I love that there's a revolt, so it makes me feel less crazy. Where I'm like, I'm glad that all fans were like, because you just look at all the replies of like, because you saw Tennessee baseball knows the reaction because they had like that little preview graphic where you could see that it was the old cream uniforms and not the new version. They know what they're doing. They know that there would been a.
I would say, generally speaking, the reaction to the uniforms inside the Tennessee baseball program have been pretty similar to the reaction from the fan base. So,
not a good year for baseball uniforms as a whole because I mean, Major League Baseball had the same issue with the small numbers and small name plates.
The same people making them. So, it's the problem across the board.
Tough look across the board, like you said, Ryan Schumpert. But Vols, they win on Saturday afternoon, avoid a season sweep of both Kentucky and Vanderbilt in the same season that they're also vying for a 1 seed, which just wild that can all be true in the same sentence here, Ryan Schumpert. But they avoid it against Vanderbilt with a huge come from behind win led by Zakai Zeigler in the second half. But what was the most important point for you in Tennessee's comeback win over the Commodores on Saturday afternoon, Mr. Schumpert?
That's a good question. I mean, it's just continuing the theme. Like every game feels similar for Tennessee right now. Of them playing one really good half, usually the second half, and one variation of a below average to bad half, which is usually the first half. So, I think it goes twofold. Like, I don't understand how they're at this point and they're still coming out so lethargic out the gates. I don't get how they're having, after the big talking point after the game on Tuesday night at Kentucky was defensive breakdowns and mental mistakes with the scouting report and stuff like that. I just don't get how they come out and have those same things be such a prevalent issue for the first half. So I think that's one of my big takeaways. But then obviously on the flip side, it's, again, we see this team, they have a gear that they've gotten to in a lot of these second halves where they do look like a team that, obviously they are in contention for a 1 seed, but they look like a team that kind of more passes the eye test of contention for a 1 seed or looks like a top 5 team, looks like a team they're like, yeah, I can see how they were ranked number 1 for a month earlier this season. So to me, it's all about trying to put together a complete performance. Because you see it when it's rolling, it looks really, really good. And that's certainly been the case more at home than on the road. But even for a good 15 minutes in the second half against Kentucky, I thought they looked really good on Tuesday night. And the offense was really clicking. And the defense for at least 10 of those 15 minutes was really good. So it felt like more of what it's been, of a very tale of two halves type performance. And it's just wondering how this team can find some consistency because we're sitting here on February 17th. We're pretty late into the year. For me, at least, there's an element of, all right, can anything really change about this team right now if it hasn't already? And that's what we're waiting to figure out.
Well, the thing that we're still waiting on that, I mean, would still help these slow starts is inserting Jordan Gainey into the starting lineup over Jemai Meshack.
Yeah, I mean, it would help. I agree they should do it, but I just think that's becoming a blanket oversimplification for bad first halves and bad starts to the game.
Yeah.
The start to the game on Saturday, they started pretty well offensively. The defense was terrible. Like that, the issue is the offense is usually the issue. And if you're talking about putting Gainey in for Meshack, that's the case. That's what you're looking to fix. And don't get me wrong, I think they should do that. I think some of the games that is an explanation for it, but there's also been a number of games now where the offense is fine to start, and it's the defense. And it's not just the first 2.5 minutes of the game when the starting lineup's in. It is a 5, 10, 15, 20-minute stretch in the first half with all sorts of lineups, and they play incredibly lethargic. So while I'm with you, I mean, I would change that. Obviously, we've talked about it on here. I think that in some ways is becoming just like an oversimplification of the issue, and just a banner. Oh, if you start Jordan Gainey, you wouldn't have this. Well, maybe it would probably help some, but it's not the only reason that this is happening.
Yeah, it's not the only, but it's just an easy, like, just positive. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a net positive. Like, it's not going to solve everything, but it's just an easy thing you can do. Like, it feels like stubbornness to be stubborn. And I just don't understand it. And I just think it's one of those, you just have to, and you can always go back if the numbers don't bear it out over the long term.
Yeah.
Like, you can go back. Like, you can flip back. It's not like Jemai has not been in both roles before as that first kind of energizer bunny off the bench and then being a starter now. Like, I think it's fine. I don't see how that 5 is not going to be the closing 5 and the most important 5 for where this Tennessee team goes this season. And you might as well get as much opportunity with them together, start as many games with them together, and to really build as much chemistry with those 5 as you possibly can going into March. I just feel like it's the most important 5-man lineup you have.
I think that's fair. Look, I think every game's going to be different in terms of closing 5. Like they close with Jemai at the 4 and Igor out on
that's
Saturday.
okay too. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I like that, but that's just my point of when you say it's the most important 5, I get where you're coming from because it's the highest ceiling 5 they have. But it's not like it's just, they're going to close with that every game, or that's just every game going to be their best lineup. I don't necessarily agree with that. But no, I think they should play it more. And I guess where I'm coming from, in my frustration with Tennessee right now, is just this is a defensive team. This is a defensive program, and they're just having, like, I can live with the offensive breakdown some, or the offensive struggles. Like, some of that's college basketball. Indiana or Illinois didn't score the final for 5.5 minutes on Saturday against Michigan State, and Illinois is a good team at home. Like that, some of that happens. The defense, like if that's what you're committed to, that's your program. Like it needs to be. And look, I'm obviously nitpicking. They're still the number 1 defense in the country on KenPom right now, but it just feels like they're having too many instances where they're having scouting report breakdowns, or they're having breakdowns to start the game or in critical moments in the second half. And that's the one that I find more inexcusable, I guess. Because some of the bad offense is just going to happen. But yeah, I mean, obviously I think we're on the same page that I would start the Gainey lineup and play that lineup more. And man, it feels like Gainey is due for some shooting variants to go back his way. I mean, he had a brutal in and out, and I think that was the second half. Maybe that was the first half on Saturday. And man, he's in quite the shooting slump right now. But it's a big credit
from 3
to him.
though.
Yes, exactly. It's a big credit to him because last year he was in that big shooting slump in SEC play, and he wasn't doing a whole lot else well. He's in the shooting slump right now, and he's still scoring around 10 points a game because he's getting to the basket, he's getting to the foul line. He's, like you said, he's hitting the mid-range shot still pretty well on the elbow. But it feels like it's coming. It feels like he's going to snap out of it at some point and start knocking down some shots like Igor and Zakai have. I mean, it's just a month later in this conversation, and both those guys have been shooting it really well.
I mean, and you also just notice, I mean, this goes back to the Zakai thing, and what the difference in the first half and the second half is. Like, Zakai just has to be active. Like, Zakai can't just float offensively. Zakai has to, because you and I, we've talked about, like, what we disagree a little bit on, like, what Zakai ultimately is as a 3-point shooter. But I think we both agree that regardless of what you think about his ceiling as a 3-point shooter is, he needs to take a lot of threes because that's his thing. Like, either shots at the rim or threes. Like, that is Zakai's bread and butter. And he doesn't take a lot of bad threes. He sometimes, like, late in the shot clock, he has to get some up. Like, he takes a lot of open looks. He gets a lot of good looks at 3, I think. Probably the best looks of anybody on Tennessee consistently have been in that 7-8 man unit right now. But you saw the difference for Tennessee on Saturday in the second half. Is like, part of it was just Zakai was active. Like, he kind of has to, I think he sometimes maybe just is so focused on getting other guys involved like he was in that first half that it's like you have to be more aggressive in getting shots up. Like, Tennessee just kind of needs that from you, even if, especially based on what we've seen from Zakai from 3, like the variance has been in his favor of late that you just talked about. So I think Zakai, I mean, it didn't matter on Saturday because he picked it up and flipped the script in the second half against Vandy. But that is something that he just has to keep in mind, I think, throughout the course of a game, is that you have to get threes up. Like, part of what Tennessee is going to need, because Tennessee's defense is not always going to be locked down and be able to keep good shooting teams off the perimeter from making good shots. Like, to counteract that, because Tennessee plays a lot of lineups where they have two non-shooters on the floor, consistently, Zakai's got to shoot threes. Like, I think he's just, the math ain't mathing there. So my thing is, like, I think Zakai has to keep that in mind, is that he needs to take like 7-ish threes a game. And what, maybe that all happens sometimes in the second half, like we saw on Saturday, where he's getting a lot of shots up. But I just don't think there's a way around Tennessee being the best they can be without him getting a lot of shots up. And I think he is definitely an unselfish player and a pass first guy, but I think he also has to be cognizant of that a little bit. Like, man, I don't have any shots. Like, I've got to get shots up here.
Yes and no to me. Yes, like first half, you're absolutely right. It felt like he was floating around. It was something that is very unusual. I wrote this in my post-game story. You didn't really notice the guy out there.
Yes.
Like, he was, and that's very rare for him. Even when he doesn't play well, that is usually when he doesn't play well, he's forcing the issue too much and he's turning the ball over.
He felt like a common Chaz SEC game in the first half.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I'd push back on the 3-point thing a little bit. The Kentucky game was the first game all season that Tennessee has lost when Zakai has had more assists than 3-pointers attempted. Typically, and it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. I think some of it is the nature of games where Zakai has to chuck up a lot of threes, is usually games when Tennessee's offense isn't flowing well. So that's why you kind of get to that. It's not as simple as him, like, oh, you don't want him to shoot him. It's sometimes he's forced to shoot bad ones because the offense is not clicking, and that's why you get to that number. But I don't feel like it's as simple as just him shooting a bunch of threes. Like, that needs to happen. I do think he needs to be aggressive every game. He needs to be forcing the issue. These last two games, I've loved it. I mean, they're playing two of the worst rim defenses in the SEC, and I've loved the way that he's attacked the basket and tried to score at the rim. He scored 17 points, I think is what it was, at Kentucky on Tuesday night, and he took 2 3-pointers, didn't make either one of them. So it's a little bit different per game, I guess, is my point. And per lineup, like you're saying, I completely agree. When they got two non-shooters out there, yes, he needs to be more aggressive when they get an open shot, especially less than 15 seconds on the shot clock. He needs to take it. It's just cognizant of matchup, what other teams' rim defense looks like, who's on the court with them. So, yes, they need an aggressive Zakai. Completely agree. I don't think it's just as simple as shooting more threes, though.
Is there a sneaky stat you have from this game that you liked, Ryan Schumpert?
I think, if anything, it was just the turnovers. Like, everybody will talk about Tennessee's offense, like, when they're missing shots, and you have the first Kentucky game. Don't get me wrong, that was a tough watch when they missed a billion threes. But to me, it's just looks so much different when they're turning the ball over a lot. That's what they can't afford to do. They've had kind of off and on all season. Like, when there's a turnover issue for a couple games, and then it feels like they get it under control and they've moved on, and then it rears its ugly head again. I think that's the big one for me. Just with the combination of limiting those miscues offensively and giving themselves, for a good offensive rebounding team, as many chances to get shots up and potentially rebound the ball. And then in some games, I thought you saw this a lot in the Kentucky game and in the first half of the Vanderbilt game, when they did have some more turnover problems early in that game. When they turn it over and it just turns into scramble drill, especially for teams like Vanderbilt and Kentucky, that have a lot of guys that can shoot the ball and shoot the ball on the court, and they get out in transition and get open shots. I think you see that be an issue for Tennessee. And when Tennessee gets their defense set and forces teams to play into half court, you usually take that bet more times than not.
Do you feel better or worse about Tennessee going into College Station this weekend after what you saw this past week?
I feel the same. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I said a minute ago. Like, this is the same type of week that we've seen a lot from Tennessee in SEC play. Close road loss, terrible first half at home, or below average to bad first half at home, and then a good second half, and they win the game. So Look, I'm skeptical of Tennessee winning. Maybe that I'm just jarred from last year's game in College Station, and I feel like they've lost their last couple there. But I mean, it's going to be an ugly game. Like Texas A&M plays the ugly brand of basketball that sometimes I think Tennessee fans think Tennessee plays. Like, don't get me wrong, Tennessee can be ugly, but A&M is let Wade Taylor take whatever shot he wants, and then let the four other dudes that have the body type of a first round pick defensive end go assault people on the glass and try to get rebounds. Texas A&M, they're awful to watch offensively.
I mean, that's what they did to Tennessee last year.
Exactly, and just because of that, I don't know if that's the best matchup for Tennessee, especially on the road. We saw Florida do that to Tennessee. Obviously, Florida's a little bit more skilled, but another really good offensive rebounding team that killed Tennessee on the glass in Gainesville. If Tennessee has, with JP Estrella out, they don't have that ability as much this year to go play big and adapt to games like this. So I feel like it's not a great lineup or a great matchup for Tennessee, and I'll probably pick A&M to win. And obviously A&M's a very good team. They're number 7 in the AP poll this week, top fringe top 10 in KenPom, I believe. So on the two line on Saturday and the preview show. But I don't feel worse because of last week either. I would have said the same thing about this matchup a week ago.
I wonder if the week off helps. Like, this is weird.
Yeah.
They don't have a Tuesday night game. I wonder if that really benefits Tennessee to kind of get some guys healthy and to give them some more time to recover. Like, this is kind of a all-star break for Tennessee this week. So I wonder if that's something, if they're a team that actually really benefits from that, especially with how physical this game's going to be on Saturday for them inside.
I think 100%, because they're banged up. Like, it feels like someone has been, if not out, like on the injury report and missing practice time. I mean, it was Igor Milicic with calf injury, didn't practice any on Friday before the Vanderbilt game. And look, Tennessee's just a really thin team, and every single game, so few games have been uncompetitive. The game they lost to Florida, the game they won against Florida, the Oklahoma game, like those are the only games that have been non-competitive. And one of those games against Florida, you had 2 players out, so you're basically playing 6 guys the entire game. So all that to say, they're playing not just a lot of minutes for these guys that are a small lineup or 7-8 man lineup. They're playing high intensity minutes, and very few games have had a lot of easy minutes. And I think all of that, this rest will be really good for them. And I think that'll be very beneficial for them down the stretch. And, maybe they come out and shoot it really well on Saturday. And certainly that'll be a good recipe against a good A&M team that getting much of anything at the rim is going to probably be pretty difficult.
I think they're going to have to. It's either going to have to be like Tennessee shoots really well. It's a good shooting game from Tennessee, and the rebounding doesn't matter that A&M puts on, or Tennessee's going to have to do the Auburn thing, where they're just going to have to take them to hell and just go full on, like, we're keeping this at 40 apiece, and we'll see what happens at the end. Like, I think that's the only recipe, is either Tennessee shoots really well from 3, or they are just taking you into the full on, just depths of hell, and making you beat them 50-49. Like, I think that's their only path. And I think it's possible, by the way. I think they could actually absolutely win the same way they almost won at Auburn a few weeks ago. It would not be surprising if that game went that way.
No, I completely agree. One thing I do think is important to note is, and I mean, it goes both ways. A&M, they get fouled a lot and they foul a lot. So it's going to be a physical game to that point, similar to the Auburn game. 2, foul trouble could be something worth monitoring for Tennessee. Like, this is a game that Zakai's got to stay out of foul trouble. I just think in general, you cannot be picking up ticky-tack fouls in this game. Zakai, Felix, whose ball screen defense has been a lot better in SEC play, but like he was early in the season, where he's late on a high hedge and he's fouling a guy with a hip check 35 feet from the basket. Like, that can't happen in this game. But
I feel like you're trying to give me like preemptive anxiety or preemptive anger about Zakai sitting for 9.5 minutes in the first half on Saturday because he picked up 2 fouls early. Like, I feel like you're laying the groundwork for that to
I mean, I'll be mad about it too. I said it, I can't remember what it was, maybe on Rick and I's post-game video of takeaways, and it was just like, what do you take away from the Vanderbilt game? Probably would have been nice not to sit him for the final 7.5 minutes in the game in Nashville, when for they've played for 80 minutes this year, and for about 60 of them, he's been the best player on the court. Or maybe.
No, you got to
40
do
of
it.
them, he's been the
Anytime you
best
can
player on
sit
the
your
court.
best player for 7.5 minutes in the first half of a key road game, Ryan Schumpert, you got to do it. Especially when he ends up with 2 fouls for the remainder of the game until 40 seconds left in the entire game. You got to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Though, can we? It is funny, and I mean, look, this is just the nature of the internet and fandom in general, is overreactions. But yeah, I mean, there were literally people 2 weeks ago saying Tennessee was better without Zakai Zeigler offensively.
That's just absolutely it's just that.
What a take! What a take that was for a game that Tennessee scored like 65 points. It wasn't like they scored 85 or something. But don't get me wrong, they did a good job without him. Jordan Gainey did a great job of running the point and doing some combo guard stuff against Florida. But
I hope we get the king, like a situation where you can meme Darlington DeBar as the king of Texas. Like, what if he carries Tennessee in both Texas games on the road?
Two things to note there. One, loved undersleeve DeBar we got on Saturday. Two, big development from the weekend. D Stone outscored his old school 3-2.
That is true.
Yeah.
Hofstra, they also have great uniforms, though, by the way.
What did you think about the blue pants? Blue pants were a little much.
You could have sold me on gray. They probably should have been gray.
Yes.
Like,
the jerseys were great.
That's what I'm saying. Like strong Milwaukee Brewers, vintage Brewers look. I thought it was good.
Agree.
The only bad jersey I saw this weekend for Tennessee Hofstra was the Friday night one, which that white, not just the insanity of where the Nike logo is, the SEC
Nike
logo, the weird line down the middle. The
line down the middle looks good, I think. Here's my hot take. You are right. The logo situation, and they need to figure that out.
All they had to do is what they had with the orange one is just put Vols in orange in the orange font. Like because I didn't like the Tennessee font.
Yes,
that they had.
I think these are better than the icy whites with the Tennessee.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Letters.
But all you had to do was change it to just the VOLS they have for the orange, the orange unis they wore on Saturday, and just make it orange.
Or just wear the old pinstripes that had the power T on the side. That was their most underused unis, only wearing them for midweek.
Or the 90s stuff that we talked about, like some of those redesigns of like
that's perfect world.
I don't know what. Like, reach out. ChaseThomasPodcast@gmail.com for the good folks over there at Tennessee Baseball when they have questions about what to do with the jerseys. We can help them out because, hey, crisis averted a little bit though. I appreciate that we're not going all in on these uniforms, Ryan Schumpert. Speaking of Tennessee baseball, the biggest story of this weekend, biggest margin I saw, it was something bonkers. The biggest opening weekend margin of victory or something with that 46-2 beatdown of Hofstra over the weekend in the bitter cold. Like, salute to all the good Vols folks who are listening here, who were attending these games, like 11 a.m. first pitch on a Sunday. Love that, with it like just brutally cold where it's like 42, but it feels like 25 on the weather app here that Jack Foster's never going to look at. And, I thought about it. Like, I thought about going and I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not putting on 9 layers my wife's absolutely not in. Khaleesi the dog's in. She's got 2 coats. Like, she's in, but no, I can't. I'm not built for it yet, Ryan Schumpert. But what was your biggest takeaway from just something that I think you can't really take that much away, because I feel like that you didn't really learn anything because Tennessee just it wasn't ever really competitive.
Yeah, I mean, just that I'm once again imploring Tony Vitello to stop scheduling teams from the Northeast and particularly New York in non-conference series. And we got another one. I mean, we got St. Bonaventure in a couple of weeks. Another school.
Bonnie's. Do you think Woj is coming? Are we getting a Woj sighting?
I think Woj is a little too locked into the basketball program. Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting to see some of the pitching roles. It was interesting to see some guys there, to see Ryan Combs out there. Obviously, Liam Doyle looked as advertised, and all this will work itself out. But, I mean, it just goes back to really what I think you said on the pod last week, is that freshmen are coming. And if you are an upperclassman, and I've been saying, I said it on our RTI Diamond Pass podcast recapping the weekend, if you're a upperclassman who's not locked into a job, that you have to play at a high level. I don't think it matters if you're just an upperclassman in general, whether you're locked into a job or not right now. You have to play at a high level because these guys are I think they're really good, and it's I don't want to crown any of them for what they did against Hofstra this weekend, but they're clearly very, very talented players, and a lot of this stuff will work itself out in the next month, but some of it I still think is going to remain a question mark heading into SEC play, and Tony Vitello is going to have some tough decisions to make.
I think he's going to have the toughest decisions he's ever had to make as the coach at Tennessee. I think this year is the toughest because I don't envy the situation that he's in. I mean, it's a good problem to have, like you mentioned. Like, you have a lot of talent, and you have some veteran talent getting pushed by younger talent. Like, that's what you want in theory. However, you're going to have some hurt feelings. Like, I just don't think there's any way around some hurt feelings with when we get to SEC play because, I mean, Levi Clark looks the part. Stone Lawless looks the part. Chris Newstrom looked good. He looks like somebody who can play a lot. Jay Abernathy didn't play other than coming in late, and Tony's answer, it was pretty funny as to someone asked him about like not starting Jay Abernathy all weekend, which was great stuff. No Jay Abernathy all weekend after like just the most hype of any freshman, and he doesn't start at all this weekend. But I just look at this and I'm like, the problem that they're going to run into is that, and part of the reason I don't think they're going to be able to repeat this year is that there is these freshmen are really, really good. Manny Marin would look great at third. He can hit. I just look around and I'm like, it's going to be hard to keep these freshmen off the field. And it's going to be hard to get to where you want to go and kind of not have this be a bridge year when you have this many freshmen that are going to command spots. Like, they're just going to, and there might be a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. I think it's going to be hard to find a consistent lineup. I think it's going to be hard to find a consistent, just a lot of consistency across the board, because I think there's going to be guys in and out. Injuries are part of the game, but it's also just, I think they're going to be forced to play a younger team this year because these freshmen are so good. And I said in our preview show that, like, I just think Tennessee in 26 and 27 are going to be number one overall seeds again. And I think this year is kind of like you got to go for it. They were really active, obviously, in the portal. Andrew Fisher, Gavin Keelan, they all look good. But I don't know if you're going to be able to realistically repeat and run the gauntlet or have another Deep Omaha run with as many freshmen that I think they're going to end up relying on as the season goes on, because I think you're going to have 3 to 4 freshmen in the lineup every day, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that's a huge overreaction to say they're going to start 3 to 4 freshmen every day. Like, who's not starting? Like, one's in left field, one's at DH. I have a hard time figuring out where somebody else is going to start at to be if Asuna gets eligible, which I think he will. I have a hard time thinking where somebody else is going to start at.
I mean, I think Abernathy in left is coming sooner rather than later. I think Levi Clark.
I think it's Abernathy or Newstrom, to your point. One of those two in left.
Yeah. I think Manny Marin's going to start somewhere in the infield. I think he's pushed it to this point where I think he'll be a starter. It's going to be a Curly situation. He's not giving it back. So that's 2. I think
what a call by me last week.
That was a great call. That was a great call.
My own horn.
Levi Clark. Well, I mean, you were out here in your preview that people can go read on Rocky Top Insider. You were like, Liam Doyle was Chris Sale in Ryan's Tennessee baseball preview, winning all the awards, pushing for Player of the Year as a whole. That you can go read in Ryan's piece. But yeah, you were all in on Liam Doyle. And he looks like an absolute superstar, and the best transfer they added this cycle. But Manny Marin, Jay Abernathy. Reese Chapman debuted at 9 and 8 in the batting lineup over the weekend. He's got a hit. He had a grand slam. That was good, but it wasn't like an overwhelming, like, Reese powered through and had a great weekend. So would it be surprising to you if Chris Newstrom found his way into right field by May in April? Like,
no, that wouldn't be shocking. I think you're right. That's probably the third. Because my thing is, because my thought right now was left field and DH are the most likely.
I think catcher's in play.
For who?
Cannon's got to stay healthy. Like, Cannon's got to get behind the dish.
Are we counting Stone as a freshman?
I mean, Stone or Levi Clark.
Well, okay. If we're counting Stone, then that does change.
I'm counting
the dynamic
Stone.
a little bit.
I'm going to count Stone.
I mean, he's not in this class. So,
he's a redshirt freshman, but I'm going to count Stone in.
Okay. If we're going to go back in time and add a second-year guy when we're talking about this class, yeah, it's a little bit more plausible.
I also
but
think
I guess my
Clark
point I was going to make is if Manny does end up being a guy that starts in the infield, then Fisher it's not going to be a freshman at DH. Essentially, is my point. Either Fisher or Asuna would get pushed to the DH spot. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's left field, right field would be the possibility of getting a third. Look, I think it's going to end up being a thing where Peebles starts twice and Stone starts once on the weekends. Maybe I'm proven wrong. I do get the general point of your take. And look, I think there's going to be some learning curves as they get into SEC play because I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating these guys, but there's just no way all these freshmen get into the SEC play and don't have some issues with the adjustment. Like it's just a different level.
Some won't though.
So you're right. Some won't. Some
Dean
won't
didn't really
fine.
hit a wall, did he? Like I don't remember anything.
Dean hit a huge wall. Dean struggled pretty.
I mean, he
big.
had a home run drought, but I don't remember like a bad.
He wasn't like awful, but his OPS the middle 5-6 weeks of SEC play was not very good.
I remember the home run drought. He had a while between home runs.
He went from like Auburn, which was I think the 4th SEC series. It was the first. It was Final Four weekend. He hit one at Auburn, and then he didn't hit one again. I think until the regional. So
that sounds right.
Yes, not.
We should also say he
all
looked
going to
great
hit
this
a wall.
weekend. Curly's gonna be a star. He looked great this weekend. Curly's gonna be great at the top of the order.
I think the top of it, 1-2 looked great. I think the 3 is the one that's interesting. I'm kind of a little bit skeptical of Hunter Inslee being that guy long term. I like him in that spot right now because he's a leader on this team and he is pretty steady. So instead of putting the pressure on somebody who's stepping into a brand new role kind of for the first time, you put it on your leader. But my guess is by the thick of the season, someone else has emerged and is hitting in that 3 hole, and they slide Inslee back down to like 5, maybe 6. But yeah, I mean, Curly and Keelan looked great. Fisher, he only had the 1 hit, but it was a absolute laser home run. Walked like 4 or 5 times, so he still got on base a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys that have been great all offseason looked great again, and it's funny going. It's the one time where it's like, all right, midweek game. We'll learn more about this team in the midweek game than we did last weekend. And then Sanford this weekend, who's, I think they were to pick to win the SoCon in the preseason, and obviously not someone I think Tennessee will lose to, at least lose the series. It probably wouldn't be shocking if they dropped a game to me, but should push Tennessee a lot more than Hofstra did or St. Bonaventure's going to early in March.
Don't overlook the Asheville Bulldogs tomorrow night, Ryan Schumpert.
That's what I said. They're a step up from what Tennessee's seen. It's an every year midweek opponent for Tennessee. They've played Tennessee, given Tennessee some pretty good games in the past. Brandon Arvidsson getting the start, which will be interesting. Yeah, I guess that's the other thing. I thought starting Nate Snead on Sunday made a lot of sense because he's going to get that opportunity at some point. Arvidsson was not stretched out. Tegan Coons was sick and didn't pitch. Dylan Loy, they still want him to face Tennessee batters a few times before they get him into game action. So you weren't really going to be able to get a look at a starter at some of these other candidates. So to me, it made too much sense to give Snead a look this first weekend.
Well, you haven't mentioned the biggest. The biggest storyline in the rotation of the weekend. How did you think Marcus Phillips did in his first
I didn't
start?
watch, so that's the hard one to say. It's the hard one to say to me. Because I was at basketball. We had it on the iPad, so I was keeping up with it, kind of watching. But look, I mean, what I'm saying is basically based on the stat sheet, which, looks good. He had a good outing, but at the same time, I would say walked 2 guys. I think I can't remember exactly what the numbers were, like 55 pitches and 33 strikes, like a good bit of balls in there. So want to see him with my own 2 eyes before I have any huge takeaways. I don't think he did anything to not give him another shot at it, but he didn't just grab the bull by the horns either. And some of the question marks that, you have with Marcus Phillips, to me kind of still showed up, or he didn't silence those question marks. So we'll see.
It wasn't bad. It was
no, I don't
solid.
mean to indicate it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
he earned another weekend. It's like we're playing Tennessee pitcher survivor over the weekend to see who stays in the rotation. He did enough to make it to the next week.
Completely agree. Yeah, that's what I mean. It was all right. Let's see more of it. Let's see more. But it wasn't like, oh yeah, he's the guy. He's gonna lock down a weekend spot. It was somewhere in the middle.
It wasn't like, Tegan, you better get some Robitussin like Saturday. Get ready to learn Saturday, buddy. It wasn't that yet.
No, not at all. I'm still very intrigued by it, and it could still be something that ends up working and would not be the least bit surprising to me. Just still up in the air at this point.
Final thing here. We're going to talk some football real quick here, Ryan Schumpert. We have to talk Tennessee football real quick. Tennessee football depth chart. Do you feel better or worse? We did tight ends last week. Better or worse about the Vols offensive line room in 2025 than you did about it in 2024?
Man, that's a good question. Slightly better because of the upside, I guess.
Because of the what?
Upside.
Ooh.
The upside at tackle, I should say. Like, they're going to be worse to me in the interior. Like, that just doesn't even seem like much of a debate. But
which is kind of concerning when you talk to people who are like more football like aficionados about like how important the interior is for high school scheme. Because I mean, all runs are up the middle. Like they're doing. Yeah. I mean, you've got to be really good in the interior to be effective in high school scheme. Like that was kind of the reason that they were like, you can survive with Jeremiah Crawford and Gerald Mincy and stuff with the tackles if your interior is really good. I mean, you should always be able to run the ball if the interior is good. So that's a little concerning potentially.
Yeah, maybe. And I guess I think it's going to be worse, but I don't think it's going to be way worse. It wasn't like Tennessee's guard play was great last season. I mean, it's going to be really, it boils down to this in the interior. They're going to probably be a good bit worse at center and maybe be about the same at guard. Like
center, I have no idea, man. I think guard's going to be about the same. Like I think guard, you're not going to notice. Like I don't think you're going to notice the difference between Andre Carrick and Pendleton and or Wendell Moy. I don't think anyone's going to be in kneeling on Saturday in November and being like, I don't know, Jim. Like Wendell Moy was just, I don't know if he's got Andre Carrick anymore. I don't know. I don't think you're going to notice that. Center, you say like it might be a good bit worse. I don't know. Like William Satterwhite's talented. Max Anderson's talented. Like Cooper May started as a redshirt freshman. Like he got in and he plugged away. I mean, and he was fine. Like I won't rule out that one of those guys takes the job and is just solid right away. Like I'm not going to overrule.
That's fine. I mean, Cooper Mays was a all SEC, second team type guy. He was really good.
Yeah.
So just from that nature, it's going to be a step back, and it could potentially. You're right. It could just be.
But in 2021, they were good with Cooper, is what I'm saying. Like Cooper was good as a young player in Tennessee's game.
Yes, he was. Doesn't mean that Satterwhite or Anderson's going to be though.
Yeah, but that's fair.
I mean, they could be. And yeah, I mean, the thing at tackles is just like, yeah, I mean, Lance Hurdy just has to be a lot better. I mean, that's where the bet is. His second year as a starter, he'll take a big step forward. And look, David Sanders, I have a hard time thinking he will not struggle early in the season if he is, in fact, the starter. But I think that the ceiling there is a good bit better than what Tennessee got with a rotation of a John Campbell with uncertain whether his knees could hold up each week, and Dane Davis. I
mean, they had to rotate a bunch. Like him and Dane were having to rotate, and it just didn't work. So I agree with you that I think Sanders has a higher floor than those two. Like I don't know.
I don't know about the floor.
I think Sanders is solid. Like at right tackle, my gut is Sanders is a plug and play, and he's going to be solid. Like I will be surprised if Sanders is not solid right away, that you don't notice.
See, that's where Caden Proctor is a heck of an offensive lineman, and he was bad the first 6
Seaton wasn't though at Colorado.
Yeah, no, that's true. But he also didn't play in the SEC. He didn't have Georgia coming to to whatever Colorado Stadium is week 4.
It's not great that they played Georgia very early in this year with Sanders.
Yeah.
Welcome to the SEC. Like your first SEC game
Yeah.
this year is Georgia at home, which is not great.
Yeah, it's kind
But
of.
I will say about Hurd, the difference this year though is I think Tennessee has realistically more options at tackle than they did a year ago, where they were like, we have to play, we have to rotate John Campbell and Dane Davis at their right spot. I don't think that's the case this year. Like if Lance Hurd is struggling, or Lance Hurd, I mean, you have Larry Johnson, who was okay in that Oklahoma game, but you also have Bennett Warren a year later. We'll see where Bennett Warren's at. You saw that Jesse Perry was getting positive buzz behind the scenes. He might be solid at a tackle spot. Like I think they have more options to go to if it doesn't go well this year than they did a year ago. I think there are certain guys who are older that are in this scheme outside of like the true freshman sensation, like David Sanders. I'm more confident that the tackles is just going to sort itself out. Like I think Tennessee has enough options now that they're going to be okay no matter what.
I do think they have more options, but when push comes to shove, if they're asking Bennett Warren or Jesse Perry, two redshirt freshmen, to play left tackle with a true freshman at right tackle, man, push comes to shove, I'm not going to feel very good about that if that's the case. You're right, more options. But if that's how it ends up, like, I have a hard time thinking that's going to go very well. Not that those guys can't be good players in turn. Not that those guys won't be better backups than what Tennessee had last year. You know, that could be possible. But it's still not something I think anybody is going to feel great about it if you really have to roll that out for an extended amount of time.
Well, and I also think, to wrap things up, I mean, everything on offense is evals this year. Everything's eval. And you look at it, you're like, you got to hit two key evals, David Sanders and William Satterwhite. These two have got to be good and ready to play because Tennessee, I think, needs them. If you want to get back in the CFP, if you want to win a game that you haven't won in the Heupel era, Georgia and or on the road at Tuscaloosa or Gainesville,
yeah,
they're going to have to be good. Like, they just have to be. Like, there's just no way around it. And those are guys you brought in, you identified, you spent a lot of money on, you went and you were like, these guys just have to be good, especially Satterwhite. Like we saw what happens with the center play, with the scheme and like tempo and everything else. Like this is a huge spring, and maybe it's Max Anderson. I don't know. Like it could just be Max Anderson, and we're just penciling in Satterwhite. But I don't know. They have to get that right because once the season gets going, you don't want to be in a pinch where you're trying to figure out who's going to be at center because the Syracuse game in Atlanta does not look right, and you have some fumbling issues. Or what was the Alabama kid who had the fumbling issues at center? He transferred.
Yeah, transferred to Ohio State.
Yeah, you don't want to be in that spot.
You're right. And I think you just hit the nail on the head, like with something you said a minute ago. Just very broad view of the season. Tennessee's going to make it back to the college football playoff. They're going to have to do something they haven't done under Josh Heupel and either beat Georgia or win in Tuscaloosa and Gainesville and win a big time road game. So yeah, I completely I think that's the overview of the season. That's the point right there. It's going to be tough to do that, and if Tennessee achieves, like in this past year, Tennessee went 10-2. It didn't feel like, and it was, don't get me wrong, it was a great year for the program. It was a big time stabilizing year to say that 2022 was not just some one-off. And you did it in a different way. I think all that stuff is important, and I don't mean to diminish that. But this program didn't take a step forward and do something that it hadn't done under Heupel. If they're going to get back to the college football playoff this year, they're going to have to take a step forward and do something they haven't done under Heupel.
And that's win a big-time road game. Like a road game where they're...
beat Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, you beat Georgia, then it's like, who cares, honestly, if you win at Gainesville or Tuscaloosa? Because if you take care of your business the rest of the way, then you're in the playoff. But maybe this is the year. Georgia's got real questions. Maybe this is the year. Gunnar Stockton coming in. Gunnar's not the guy. Georgia hasn't figured out what all their new pieces there. I don't know. I still
see it when I believe it.
Yeah, I think, and I've been really high on Alabama this offseason. I don't feel good about it. Though I think right now of the three, we should do this updated polling throughout the offseason, Ryan, of like which way, like how would we rank the 1 through 3 of most likely for the first ever Heupel win here this fall. I've been on one Florida for a while, and I'm going to stay on that one. Florida getting moved to November, I think it might turn out to be the saving grace for Tennessee in making the CFP in 25, is that Florida is going to have to go through that brutal schedule again, and they might be checked out by that point. And it's a little bit different. Tennessee, I think, will have... I think there's a way there's an avenue I could see that Tennessee avoids a lot of those early pitfalls in Gainesville late in the year if they know they've got a playoff to play for, and if they win that game, they're in again. So I don't know. My gut is they treat it like a Vanderbilt game, and even if they dig a hole with some kick return touchdowns, I think Tennessee getting Florida in November, I think, will prove to be the best elixir to getting them back to the CFP, because I don't see Tuscaloosa or Georgia in 25 for them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that getting that game in November is a bigger help. It is a little bit wild to me with Tennessee's history in Gainesville that you're going fall behind 14-0 in Gainesville. Not a big.
They've never done it in November. They've never fallen behind 14-0 in November.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. Again, I agree with that. I would,
because I think if they win that game, if they go into it, I think there's a strong possibility going into the narrative that week is if Tennessee wins, they're in the CFP. Like that,
yeah,
I think
obviously that's very plausible. They have
so if that's the case,
two
I think there's just I think they'll be locked in. I think it's going to help them that they know if they just take care of this.
So. I sure hope they'd be locked in playing at Florida.
I'm just saying it's a little bit different early in the year.
They're not locked in at Florida.
But in the beginning of the year, you're like, oh, we dropped it, whatever. We can earn it back later on in the year. Now you go to Gainesville this fall. I think there's a real possibility you go in, you're like, you win and you're in. It's a playing game.
I mean, I agree with the second part. I don't know if any of these Tennessee teams have been going into Florida with, we'll be fine if we drop it. That's just such flawed logic. Not to say that you couldn't be right, that they haven't, but yeah, I don't know. And I will say again, typically I think it's better to get Florida in November. This past year would have been the opposite. It would have been way better to go to Gainesville in September than it was in November. So, we'll see what happens. Obviously, the dynamic changed. They had the quarterback change, and
I don't know. I think Lagway is a better matchup for Tennessee than Mertz. Mertz is the type of quarterback that kills Tennessee. Like Howard did it. Those guys, those accurate over the middle.
I mean, yeah, I agree with the. Yes, I think that's accurate. But Lagway also is really good, I think, or is going to be really good. So we'll see. But yeah, I agree with that. Mertz is the type of guy that kills Tennessee.
Ryan Schumpert, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Rocky.Insider.com this week?
Oh, the same old usual stuff, plugging along. Tennessee baseball, we'll have content on that. Tennessee basketball, we'll have a little bit of open date stuff in the middle of the week, and then everything to get you ready for A&M.
There you go. Ryan Schumpert, always a pleasure, and I'll talk to you next week.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.